Mike Parker joins us now, the play-by-play voice for the Oregon State Beavers. And um, you know what? We've kind of got, Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
We've kind of got a little Oregon weather going today. We got overcast skies. We've had some rain. Temperature temperature here is down into the 80s. I
Yeah.
think we're supposed to have high 80s for a high today, and now we've got quite a bit of humidity. But I have already checked the long range forecast, and I will tell you that I think all of us traveling from this direction toward Corvallis for the game next week are looking forward to enjoying some fine Oregon weather.
Robert, I'm glad you've done your research on our weather in the Pacific Northwest. I've read, and I know parts of our great nation and the world. My daughter was in Europe this summer after graduating from Oregon State, went on a kind of a, as they used to call them in the old days, a grand tour, so to speak, and got to experience Europe for the first time, which the old man still hasn't, but I'm glad for her. But it was 108 in Paris and 109, different, hottest weather they've ever had. I know it's been one of the hottest years ever on the planet, except for our little corner of the world in the Pacific Northwest, for which I guess we should be grateful. I kind of admit we've had very few 90-degree days. I do think it moves into the 90s a little bit next week, but game time, I've looked ahead too. I think it's supposed to be a high of 86 during the day, and it should cool off very pleasantly for next Friday night.
Looking forward to this. I told we had Ron on your sideline reporter,
Yeah.
Ron Callens, the other day, and I have never, Oregon's one of the states I haven't been to. I was yesterday at practice. Dave Hunziker, our play-by-play voice, we drove up in the parking lot at the same time, and I was asking Dave if he had run into you because I mentioned I've got Mike Parker on the radio
Mm-hmm.
show tomorrow, and he said, you know what, we played him in basketball in Vegas, and I remember shaking hands, and I remember he looks exactly like a guy at my church. So I took a picture and texted to the guy at my church and said, I didn't know you were the voice of the Beavers. And, I mean, that's one of those stories. We all have a twin out there somewhere. Your twin is down here at Dave's at the Catholic Church in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
That's funny, Robert. Now, he did all of this unbeknownst to me. I had no idea that he was getting that sort of experience sending a photograph of me. I feel sorry for that guy, but at least there's two of us in the world. I'm glad to hear it.
Well, let's talk about this matchup coming up. It's probably overdue. Two schools that go by
Yeah.
OSU, two schools that wear orange and black, and I know Oklahoma State's baseball team had a pleasant trip up to Corvallis
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
during the baseball season. And I know Mike Gundy expects their trip to be a lot more difficult. He thinks this Oregon State team, like I think the Oregon State people want to believe, is a better football team in year two for Jonathan Smith.
I think so, Robert, and certainly the Athlon's preseason. One of the first things I noticed in starting to prepare for the season, going through I'm an old-fashioned guy and will read magazines, buy them, and read them. And Athlon's preseason.
Me too.
I'm glad. So we're old school guys, just like the guy
we are.
at the Catholic Church. Quote, the schedule is favorable, said Athlon. The schedule is favorable for Oklahoma State with a light non-conference opening, serving as a break for an opportunity to break in a new quarterback, quote unquote. The light non-conference opening caught my attention, and I'm sure Coach Gundy and the Oklahoma State coaches, players are playing that idea down. I think a lot of people have that idea that it does serve as a light non-conference opening, but I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to be a good football game. I really do. I think you've got two offenses that I think will score some points, and both teams have tremendous question marks on defense. Oklahoma State, not as many as Oregon State after the miserable season the Beavs had a year ago, but just watching camp, watching practice, looking at the new personnel, the transfers that are now eligible year two, and Tim Tibesar's system as the DC. I think the Beavers will be much improved on defense, and on offense they'll be better with revived Jake Luton in his sixth year, and the first time the quarterback's been involved in a system for a second straight year. He's got a lot of targets in the receiving core, outstanding running backs. So I'm looking forward to a good football game, and I have a feeling Coach Gundy isn't just, engaging in coach speak when he's trying to caution people, if he has been, about the idea that this is just going to be a cakewalk for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, no, I don't think he is. And here's a couple of things that I'm interested in. And Dave Hunziker and I were talking yesterday at practice, and we were, I told him, I said, I haven't been this excited for an opener in a while because there are some great storylines here. And Dave said, yeah, he goes, there's more storylines than we've had in a while. Obviously, on the Oklahoma State side, it's the quarterback situation. There's some other things, but some things that I think both these teams have in common. I know that both are coached by former quarterbacks here at their alma mater. Now Mike has a lot of years on Jonathan Smith, as far as Mike's now in his 15th year, and Jonathan Smith is in year 2. But just current events, both teams have 2 quarterbacks. I know Luton is really considered the starter there. Here, I think you're probably going to see both in the first game, and it may be a game or 2 before they actually name a starter. I think they feel good about both the guys. But here's another one. Both teams have new offensive line coaches. And reading some of the material that I've been able to read from the papers up in Oregon, they're real excited about Coach McCulloch, right? Is that the way you say it?
Yeah, it's actually pronounced Mahalchik, Jim Mahalchik, and he actually was
Mahalchik.
He was Mahalchik, and yeah, it's like trying to. When I first was a kid, and I'm old enough, I don't know if you are. Carl Yastrzemski's baseball card in the early days threw me off, but it's pronounced Yastrzemski. It doesn't look like it should be, but it is Jim Mahalchik, and he's actually in his second year here. So, but he had been the O-line coach for Khalil Tate in Arizona, and I remember when the Beavers would play Arizona, my broadcast partner and I would, after yet another scoring drive by Khalil and the Wildcats, we'd take our headsets off during a break and say, oh my gosh, this offensive line is good. We weren't good defensively, but, they were very good. When Khalil Tate came on the scene, Khalil was electrifying, but he had an offensive line under Mahalchik's guidance that was very good. And so Jim, in his second year with this group and some infusion of some new guys up front, I'm with you on that. I think the O-line is going to be very good in year 2 with Coach Mahalchik at Oregon State. I don't know what's the word about Oklahoma State and their new O-line coach.
In love. I mean, I think if he ran for mayor tomorrow, even though he hadn't done a lot of media stuff and he's not that kind of guy, people here tend to fall in love sometimes with offensive line coaches. And even though Josh Henson, who's an alum and played here at Oklahoma State, left to go to Texas A&M, did a nice job of recruiting the last couple of years and restocking what had been a very thin offensive line position. And now you bring in Charlie Dickey from Kansas State, who we've watched his offense, and all he's done is crank up, guys that you'd never heard of, and the next thing you know, they're playing in the NFL.
Right.
And he's done a terrific job. I think folks here are very fired up. In fact, I think he may be the biggest difference maker between last year and this year on this Oklahoma State football team. But that's something they've got in common. And then the negatives they have in common, you kind of mentioned them. Both these teams gave up way more yards on offense, rushing in particular, than they would ever want to give up. And Oklahoma State, I know, Oregon State's had a couple of years where they've allowed way too many points, but Oklahoma State allowed a record number of points per game to their opponents last year. Now with a second-year coordinator in Jim Knowles, they're hoping that's better. So, like you said, both these teams would badly like to show improvement on the defensive side.
Yeah, and the thing that probably, made a huge difference with respect, if I'm reading correctly, Oklahoma State finished 112th in total defense. And that's not good. The Beavers were 129 out of 130, so that's worse. So I think that's where at least my eyes and probably a lot of Cowboys fans' eyes are going to be looking early. Okay, what kind of answers do we have? And I think it's a great challenge for both defenses if indeed they're improved because, Robert, I think these offenses, both of them, are pretty good and are going to be tremendous challenges to the idea that, hey, we're better on defense. Well, I think this game, don't you think? I mean, it's going to give a chance. We'll find out early if the defenses are much improved.
Yeah, we're coming up on Mike Gundy's news conference
Mm-hmm.
at noon today, and one of my questions is, how much value do you put on the very first series defensively? Because if I'm Jonathan Smith with Jameer Jefferson
Mm-hmm.
and an offensive line I feel a lot better with, I want to prove to Oklahoma State right off the bat, guess what, guys? We're going to be able to run the football. And not only are we going to be able to run it, we're going to run it down the other end of the field and put points on the board. And while we're doing it, your offense is going to be sitting over there dying to get on the field.
Yeah.
You guys are in a conference with Mike Leach, and we've been with Leach before.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about Mike Leach, we would accuse his defenses at Texas Tech at times of letting the other team score because Leach was saying, I want to get my offense on the field. Just let them score. Let them score, and we'll – I mean,
Yeah, no, I know.
I don't – Mike Gundy's not that way, but I can tell you, being down on the field, that bench area gets antsy when the offense hadn't been on the field in a while.
Speaking of the offense, I'm wondering, when you mentioned Charlie Dickey and how he hasn't done much media, I agree with you, though. Over the years, offensive line coaches become, at least all the ones that we've had and some really good ones, they are go-to people for us in the media because, I mean, there's a toughness about them. There's oftentimes a saltiness about them. And Jim Maholchik here is the guy that you hear his voice above all others at an Oregon State practice. It's kind of a foghorn. It's loud, and he's challenging guys, and they get better under him. And coordinators, of course. I'm wondering how Sean Gleason and the ideas that he's brought to what's always been. I mean, Gundy, it seems as though, always has good offenses and can adapt and adjust and change the way he plays. How is Gleason's ideas? How have they gone over with your fans? I mean, do you look for some new stuff this year that we haven't seen in the past? Maybe I've looked at some of your old game films, but I wonder what Gleason's got up his sleeve.
Yeah, I don't think initially, and Mike Gundy did this with Mike Yursich, who was the previous offensive coordinator that came from Shippensburg in Division II, and now is back up in his home territory as the quarterback's coach and pass game coordinator at Ohio State. You come in, you run the Oklahoma State offense, and this is a vast offense. I mean, Mike.
Yeah.
This offense still has the play action chapter that really is a Mike Gundy chapter. It has some of the Larry Fedora stuff. It has some of the power game that goes all the way back to Les Miles. It has the Dana Holgerson spread. I mean, the actual collection of the playbook is huge. And then each season they kind of weed it down into what they think the guys are capable of and will be best at for this particular season. I do think we'll see some Sean Gleason. I think he was hired to bring some of the quarterback run game that Princeton has. But I don't know that you'll see it until into the season a little bit. I think what you're going to see next Friday is vintage Oklahoma State material, would be my guess. And Mike kind of makes the OC say, look, before we put anything new from your collection in, you have to master our collection. And so that's kind of been what Gleason's done during the spring, summer, and into this season.
Well, I do. Part of the reason I'm intrigued, though, I mean, and certainly the offensive success Mike has had, I mean, his own knowledge and ability is obvious. But, when the last time that a guy, from that neck of the woods, it came out and wowed the Pac-10 in the early days, now the 12, was Chip Kelly. And the thing about Chip, when he got to Oregon in 2007, is people talked, nobody knew who he was, but people talked about, quote, innovative schemes, unquote. And we saw, I mean, he took the Pac-10 by storm for a couple, for his run as a coordinator, then as head coach. So I've been puzzled as to, okay, well, what was so innovative about what Princeton did? And I know, but again, it sounds like you're saying it may be a while before people kind of find that out as it kind of gets integrated in, because
Yeah.
there's enough innovation and good productive stuff, even if you don't bring in Sean Gleason, it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's not the stuff he brings in that he did a lot of quarterback power, quarterback sweep,
Mm-hmm.
some other RPOs are things we've seen in the Big 12. So it's not the maybe the biggest new thing, and I know people around here talk about it because they're looking forward to seeing it at some point. Uh, is Sean Gleason would put two quarterbacks in the formation out at Princeton from time to time
Mm-hmm.
and do some
Mm-hmm.
some cute stuff with that. But when you're still trying to decide who your quarterback is, it's kind of hard. They might get confused if you were to throw two of them out there at the same time. But
Well, maybe that's
uh,
the best answer to the question, though, is who's the starter? Well, they'll both start on play one. How about that? Can we see
yeah,
that?
but no, I don't think. Yeah, you know what? If I were betting on play one, I'd bet on outside zone. That's kind of OSU's
Okay.
go-to run play, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. I mean, you guys bring in Jefferson, who I've watched tape this summer. I mean, this
Mm-hmm.
kid's he's real deal, and
Yeah.
we're taking one of our kids that's from Canada actually closer to home than he'll probably get his entire career here in Chuba Hubbard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think fans are going to see two really good running backs next week.
No, I agree. And yeah, and when you talk about eyeballs on the first defensive series, I agree with you, Robert, about just the matchup. This is very intriguing. This is the most intriguing home opener the Beavers have had since hosting Wisconsin in 2012. Russell Wilson beat the Beavers in Madison the year before, 35-0. We got him back into Corvallis the following year. Russell was gone by then, so that equalized the field a bit. But on the first play, a maligned defense from the year before tackled, I can't remember the running back, but tackled him for like a 3 or 4 yard loss. And the place, Reser Stadium, went absolutely crazy because it felt like something new had hit. Like, okay, this team's going to be better, and that team got out 6-0 and was ranked in the top 10. And the buzz in the place was palpable. I don't know if Hubbard's going to get tackled for a loss on an outside zone, but it's the type of play, you know what I mean? If the Beavers if Jordan Whitley, the big nose tackle who's been brought in for 1 year here, can make a play on first down and stop somebody for no gain or a loss of one, I think you'll feel energy immediately in the place, because most of our eyes as fans, I think, for both of these teams are going to be watching what happens on that side of the ball, maybe even more than the other.
Well, I will say this now: if it's outside zone, and and Hubbard gets stopped for a loss,
Yeah.
then I may be making my way over to the Oregon State sideline because I may be run out over there. I always
Yeah. No.
believe Mike Gundy's got. I think he has somebody listen to my show,
Yeah.
because even though I know he's busy, every once in a
Right.
while I'll bump into him and he'll say, "I can't believe you said that on your show the other day."
Yeah.
And
Right. Right. But
so
yeah.
yeah, forget I said
Uh,
outside zone.
No, I
They
know.
don't
I
ever
look
run
for
that.
How about under center and play action from Drew Brown to Tylen Wallace? How about that? I mean, I don't know how often you guys go under center. I know that in Jonathan Smith's experience coaching Jake Browning to some big seasons at Washington and to the CFP 1 year, Jonathan is the coordinator there. I like, and what you talked about too, all the different stuff Jonathan has in his repertoire. He can go under center. Most of it is shotgun, as most offenses seem to operate these days. But there's a lot of different stuff in Jonathan's playbook over the years, and so who knows? Maybe Brown goes under center and you play action and challenge, some cornerbacks in a secondary that has some experience, but hasn't really faced the likes of the kind of receivers I think they're going to see in this opener in a while. So there's all kinds of things at Gundy and Gleason's disposal. I don't think you gave anything away, Robert.
I think we've got a pretty good number of fans that are going to travel up to
Good.
Corvallis for the game, and I've seen Reser Stadium on TV, never been there. Give them an idea of what the pregame atmosphere is like. What's it like outside the stadium and so forth?
Well, Given, the Beavers have struggled, as you know. 9-39 is the record over 4 years, and that's the definition of struggle after an excellent beginning to the new millennium, going to the Fiesta Bowl in the year 2000 and beating Notre Dame with Dennis Erickson's team that went 11-1. And Mike Riley had some teams that you probably saw, beat USC a couple of times at your Quiz Rogers game on a Thursday night at Reeser with a packed stadium and a sea of orange after the game, after Quiz had rushed for 188 and beat the top-ranked Trojans. We've seen scenes like that, and the atmosphere on game day like that is unbelievable. It really is. The loudness in the stadium. It's a small stadium, and when it's full and the fans are engaged, it's a tough atmosphere to play in. You can ask Pete Carroll and a lot of coaches who come through there through the years. But the slippage here the last few years has led to a lessening of that kind of buzz and energy and excitement. But Jonathan Smith knows that it's up to him and the team to kind of recreate it. So I'm not sure that Oklahoma State fans are going to come and say, oh, my gosh, that atmosphere outside of Reeser or within it was the greatest they've ever seen. I'm not sure about that. I do know, though, that there's a core of people that through thick and thin, and there's been a lot of thin, 28 consecutive losing seasons before Riley and Erickson turned things around. And now there's a fear that they're slipping back again with the 9-39 and 5 straight losing seasons. That, are we going to head back to the dark ages again? I don't think so. I do think fans will appreciate the facilities. The stadium needs some modernization on the press box side, as you'll see. That the new side on the other side from the press box view. The north and east side view is beautiful. The facilities at Oregon State are excellent and comparable. The arms race is always on, but I think administrators have done a good job and the coaches have done a good job to raise the profile of the program. But it's going to take some plays early to kind of, I think, get that buzz going. But if there's a 3rd and long, and I think I hope to see a couple of those against Oklahoma State next Friday night. If there's a 3rd and long, they fire up a chainsaw background effect. It's unique to Oregon State, and so the chainsaw is blaring through the sound system, and fans respond to it and are up and loud. I think it's a good atmosphere in the Pac-12, not necessarily the most intimidating or the best, but when the Beavers have it going, and I've seen it over the 21 years I've been doing the game, it can be a special place. And I think Friday night, given that it's the opener, it's a beautiful evening, it's an intriguing matchup, I think fans coming from Stillwater and other places in your area will enjoy what they see in Corvallis.
Well, Mike, I appreciate it. We'll look forward to, I know Dave, I speak for Dave Hunziker, John Holcomb, and Britt Lockhart, our producer engineer. We always enjoy going places we've never been, meeting people we haven't met, and so we'll look forward to meeting you and your crew, and looking forward to the season opener there in Corvallis next Friday. Have a great week, and we'll see you up there in Oregon.
Robert, looking forward to it. Appreciate you having Ron and myself on the show, and I look forward to meeting Dave, and I want to see a picture of that fellow soul down at his Catholic church. So I look forward to that.
I will tell him to have that ready for you. Your Oklahoma twin.